Welcome to the Fine Print, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Caleb Teskey, and today I am joined by Fattie B, aka Kyle Thompson, aka legendary Burlington DJ, joining us today. Thank you so much for being here, Kyle.
Thanks so much for having me, man.
Yeah. I would like if we could start with a 5-minute life story, perhaps.
Yeah.
That's my icebreaker.
Yeah. You want me to just tell you like my path?
Basic details. Where you from? Yeah. Shit like that.
Yeah. Okay. So I grew up in Bristol, Vermont. Went to Mount Abe High School. I graduated in 1988. I'm an old man, and I headed off to Champlain College. And I was in college for about 6 weeks, and I went to a party and freestyled at this party over this beat this DJ was playing, and a future friend heard it and came up to me and said, "Listen, we're putting this band together, and I really think that this is something you might want to check out and that it might make sense." So I went up to this UVM house and immediately loved the fact that these 7 other musicians were looking in terms of making music that was instrumental driven, hip hop, funk, acid jazz, soul music. And I knew I wanted to do music, and I had been making some stuff in my bedroom just on super low budget, but the thought of being with a live band blew my mind. And we hit it off right away. And just because of kind of the people that we knew and the quality of the musicians in this group, all of a sudden this group called Belizbaha just exploded before any of us were ready. And within months we were on the road and doing shows, and then pretty soon we were just a full-time touring band. And we were really successful. We toured all over the US multiple times. We went over to Germany.
Sounds like you did an average of 250 shows per year.
We were
Wow.
road warriors.
Holy shit.
And back in, this is 93, and the band went until 99, but 93, 94, 95, this is really pre-internet the way we know it today. So the only way as a band to really get known was to hit the road, and was to go to as many places as you could go and be heard by as many people as you could hear. And we often joke now, because we still do some reunions once in a while that are fun and successful, but we're like, man, if we had had the internet instead of having to word of mouth get people to come out to us, if we had been like in the van on the way to the gig doing social media promotional stuff, it would have been crazier. But we were way over our heads and didn't know any better. We're just dumb enough to think that we could just go and do this, and we exploded so quickly.
Well, it sounds like you were smart enough to also pull it off.
We were. The band the musicians that made up this band were super talented, and all of them have gone on to do other professional stuff.
Do you remember any of their names?
Yes.
Would you care to shout them out? Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Jeremy Scaller was the keyboard player. He is now a producer in LA. He has produced the likes of Jay Sean, a bunch of R&B soul artists. He's got his fingers on a bunch of different stuff in the music industry, but very successful. Mark Robohm, the drummer, lives in New York. He's been a touring drummer with some bands. He's done session drumming with some bands. Very successful in his own right. Kadiatu Sibi was one of the vocalists. She's a female vocalist. She's done a bunch of stuff music-wise, but she's kind of transitioned her career into a more professional aspect these days. Still successful in her own right. Shauna, and her name was Antonia, because she's now Shauna Anderson after she got married. Singer, done a bunch of stuff singing since then. Put out a couple of jazz albums of her own. Played with a bunch of bands. Bob Dunham is a guitar player. Lives in Portland, Oregon. He continues to this day to play with a bunch of bands. Sean Williams lives here still. He's the bass player, and he's played with a bunch of people. They're all just crazy talented, and I was so blessed to be a part of it. And Belizbaha has an experience.
What was your role? You were rapping?
I was rapping.
Awesome.
And Belizbaha went from, we were very eclectic in our style, and that's what a lot of people were drawn to about us, because we had the 2 female vocalists. So we would have a song that was just a female vocalist, and then we would have a song that they were singing the chorus and I was rapping, and then they would do a song where I was doing the chorus and they were singing. And so each song was its own individual feel, and we had so many different influences in the band, from jazz to blues to soul to hip hop to funk to Euro pop, that like our style went wherever the mood took us. So we grew up on the jam band scene too. So we did some jamming, not to the level of some of the bands that were touring like that then, but we knew enough that like when we added that element, people dug it, and we took it off into the stratosphere every now and then, and gave people what they were looking for. So we also toured with Fish's horn players for a while, and then once the word got out about that, that whole crew kind of took us under their wing too, even though we were a different style than what they were used to.
Oh, sick.
You know, they still pulled us into the circle, so that was cool. So then after Bliss Bob, which was a 7-year run, when that came to an end, basically it ended because we just got burnt out of the touring life, and we had some inter-band relationships that were ending, and I just think we'd all just reached the end of like trying so hard to get to this record deal that we really thought we were going to, and it looked like we were going to, but we weren't.
It's a lot to coordinate when you're playing with a group of that size, I would imagine.
Oh yeah. And the labels were saying that. They're like, listen, a 3-piece band we have trouble trying to deal with, but a 7-piece, yeah. So when that ended, I came back and I went back and did what I told my parents I would. I finished college, and when I came back here, I started a group with one of the best DJs I've ever seen or known in my life, DJ A-Dog, who lived here, and a friend of mine, Conflict, who I'd met through Bliss Baha, and we started a group called IOU.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and IOU exploded as well, and we put out some albums and got some national acclaim, and that was just something that I almost could see that signing a record deal easier than Bliss Baha. And then some things happened with that where that kind of just went the wrong direction, and it didn't really make sense anymore. So A-Dog got sick shortly after that, and had a battle with leukemia, and ended up losing the battle, which was a tough thing. But after that, I started to realize that I just wanted to have my hand in helping as many artists around here as I could. So I started doing compilations and just helping other artists who were making music in their bedrooms to get heard. So by putting them on compilations with artists that were already known in the area, and when they weren't, it helped them to get into ears they wouldn't have otherwise. So I did a bunch of those.
And you grew up in a time where we didn't have the option to make music in our bedrooms. We didn't have all the MIDI equipment. We didn't have the easy, like the Pro Tools and all that shit. It must have been interesting to sort of watch the progression of how music is able to be made.
I mean, what's crazy to me is when I started the Gumbo record that's out now that we'll talk about in a minute probably, but
it's on the list.
That were sending me the beats that they wanted me to be on for that, I was blown away by the quality. Like, I grew up where you had to rent the studio time, you had to go there with the person you were going to record with, you had to sit there for hours, you had to be in person together. Now it's like you can make an entire record virtually. They email you the beat, you go in the studio and record the lyrics, you send it back, they mix it, they send you the mix, you make some notes, they make the adjustments. It's like it's funny because many of the people in this Gumbo record, it was like it's 45 artists, and when we had the listening party, one of the reasons we had it was because a lot of the artists had never met each other in person, and they're like, hey, I'd like to meet this person I made a song with. So we had a meeting session where like we could listen to it all, but then they could sit down and say, oh, that's who you are, like, nice to meet you finally. Like, pretty crazy, man. But like, you can still get that sense of like you were together when you recorded it, even though you weren't, just because of how easy it is to do now, and the quality that these kids are doing in their rooms, man. Like, it sounds like full band production stuff, and it's a computer.
Yeah, I've listened to the album, which we're gonna get to in a little bit. But I mean, for sure, it seems like you can do a lot with a little at home now.
And so I knew that I wanted to continue to keep my hand in that stuff, and I did the compilation stuff for a while. And then at a certain point, I just felt like I was getting to the age and getting older where my creative juice wasn't quite there. And then I didn't really want to be seen as someone who was competing with these younger cats. And I don't ever look at it as competition, but I just could see it being seen that way if I was trying to make music that sounded new. And I've always had my niche, which is like that soulful, Tribe Called Quest-y, jazzy vibe, which that just speaks to me.
You
So that's
mentioned that.
kind of my
Were
thing.
you a big Tribe fan
Oh,
growing up?
huge,
I
huge.
feel like you also mentioned Jazzmatazz.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like when I thought of doing the Gumbo stuff, I wanted it to be like the Jazzmatazz, where like Guru was the host of bringing in a bunch of artists and highlighting them, you know. But the Tribe thing, I was a huge, huge, huge Tribe fan, and
Me too.
they totally changed the way that I looked at hip hop in general, like them and De La, really. And one of the greatest memories I have from Baha is we got signed to this. We signed with this promotional agency that was much bigger than we even understood at the time. And one of the first big shows that they kind of threw at us out of nowhere, we were like on tour, and they said, "Hey, if you skip this crappy gig you got coming up and take a left on tour, you can do this gig." And it was opening for Tribe Called Quest and Medeski Martin and Wood in DC in front of
Oh,
like 13,000 people.
dude,
And
Medeski.
we,
I love Medeski Martin and Wood.
oh
They're
man, they were
fantastic.
insane. Like, so we switched our route and went to do it. And I said, you know, I met Chris Lighty, their manager, and I said, listen, it's really important for me to meet these guys. Like, they're huge influences on me. And so he introduced me to them, and they came out when we were performing and were like checking out our set and like digging it. And for me, it was like a moment of validation of like I believed in us and I believed in myself, but to have a hero, you know, looking over at you and saying, "Yeah, man, you're doing this. Like
Wow.
keep it up," you know. So I'll never forget that moment. And there was a bunch of those with Blizzbot for sure, were like validated moments. But for me, it was like, man, Tribe was what I aspired the level to get to, you know.
When I
So
got a hold of the anthology, I believe I was 15 or 16, and it
yeah,
just I had originally heard Award Tour on a
yeah,
skateboarding game
yeah, yeah, yeah,
on the PlayStation, and I was
yeah,
like, "What the fuck is that? That is amazing!" And then I
yeah,
got the anthology, and that was high
yeah,
school for me.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, when Low End Theory first came out, me and my buddy just like went in his Jeep and just drove for, I'd say 8, 9 hours and just hit repeat every time and just soaked it in. And you know, we talk a lot about that kind of a feel too with music nowadays. Is like nobody really buys an album to listen to the whole album anymore. It's like a digital single, and you give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and then you move along. And if you don't like it and you don't save it to your playlist, you never hear it again. When
Mm.
we were young, it was like you had to like save your fucking $12, go to Pure Pop, you bought this record, and even if you hated it the first two listens, you're like, that was my hard-earned money. I'm going to listen to it 4 or 5 times at least before I decide, and then you'd find something to like in it. And you know, like opening up and reading the liner notes, how big a deal that was, and like just the whole album experience is so it's kind of lost now, and it's so sad to me. But I wanted Gumbo to be that for real, like where people really immerse themselves in the whole record, and it feels like they have, which is nice. Try to get back to that feeling of like a project is a project and made with everything in mind from beginning to end. You know?
You know, that's a great point that you make there, man. Because you know the beauty of the internet is that, and the beauty of sort of being able to build a home studio for super cheap is that everyone can make music, and then the
Yeah,
downside is that everyone can make
yeah, yeah,
music,
yeah,
and then you know, so it's hard to, I don't want to say it's hard because there's tons of music out there, but it almost feels like there's so much that it's hard to dial in on,
yeah,
like, where do
yeah,
I find the hot shit?
yeah. I mean, I have a weird relationship with like music in general because I'm a DJ and a live music artist. So I see the benefits of the club owner saying like, hey, we can pay a DJ $400 as opposed to a band 1,000 and not have to hire a sound man. So I've seen that whole side of the music, especially in Burlington, like the bands getting food taken out of their mouths for the DJ to succeed. But I'm one of the DJs, so I was succeeding while it was happening to myself. So it was a weird land to live in. But I'm also one of those people that's like, I've seen and heard so many cover bands, and just because you can sing a cover doesn't mean you should. You
Right,
know,
right.
there's some
Especially in Burlington,
terrible,
there's a lot of those jam band cover bands, and
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So like I'm all about creativity. Whenever I hear a cover that changes the way the song is made or what it was made as it was made and changes a whole different feel, but you're still grooving on the song itself, that's when I lose my mind. Like Craig Mitchell actually does a cover of a Prince tune, with Matt Hagen on guitar, and they do it in the form of a Johnny Cash song, but it's a Prince tune. And the way that they do it, every time I've heard it, I'm just like, you guys got to record this, because it's like so mind-blowingly creative, but you still appreciate the genius of Prince, even though it has nothing to do with the original song. It's like unbelievably done well. Like, that's my thing, man. I do a radio show every other week.
Yeah, I
And
saw that. That was my
show.
next note here was your work on the radio. So
yeah, so
good
I've
segue.
been, I DJ'd for a very, very long time at Retronome and Burlington at Metronome, and I did an 80s night, and I did it for almost 20 years, and I got so sick of the same track list that one of my missions always was to go out and find remixes and mashups of those 80 songs, so I at least had a different way to present them to people. And as I started to get into looking for mashups, I started to find all these mashups, and I'm like, man, so many people need to hear these cool, creative remixes of stuff. I'd love to someday do a radio show based around that. And finally, about 4 years ago, I started it, and it's called the Bangers and Mash Show. It's every other Sunday morning on the Radiator.
Which is a fucking great name for a show, dude.
Oh, it just fell into place. But my regular show is an hour of all genre musical mashups, and I play a bunch, and I talk about the artist who made it and what two songs are mixed. And what's cool is I've become very good friends with the producers who make them and the DJs. We have a great relationship now. They send me stuff all the time. They rebroadcast the show and share it with their friends. So it's great. But every once in a while, I do a special set in my show called Uncovered, where I find cover versions of stuff that but in ways you've never heard before. Because for me, finding that creative cover is what it's all about. So I've done 4 episodes so far, and I'm actually next week and the show 2 weeks after, I'm doing 2 more new episodes. I've been compiling songs for a minute in between the last show and these new shows.
That's another great name for a show, by the way.
Uncovered, yeah, and it's great, and I love sharing that with people. But the mashup show has been awesome, and in turn, one of the DJs I became pretty good friends with, he's like, man, you're a brilliant DJ. You've done this for a long time. Like, why don't you start making your own mashups? And I was like, well, I'm like, be honest with you, as much experience as I've had in the music world, I'm not technically savvy. And he literally went on Zoom with me and showed me how to do it. And so I started making my own like a couple years ago, and now I make them all the time. And those
nice.
DJs are playing.
That was nice of them.
Yeah,
you got some good friends. It sounds like.
No, they're good people. I mean, all these creative minds, when you start sharing their work and you like appreciate them, they love to return the favor. So it's like it's reciprocal, which is nice, for sure.
Mm.
Yeah.
Did you I got a note in here about working with Mark Echo or Echo Unlimited?
Yeah, so when Beliz Baja was near the end of our run, I had a couple of DJs who did some remix stuff for us, and then when they were doing some remix stuff for us, we were in New York City, and our female vocalist and our bass player went in, and they recorded like a couple of original stuff, and they did a big remix, a 12-inch vinyl that came out of a song called Inhibitions, and I wasn't on that one, but it blew up, and it was kind of this like underground hit, and the Echo compilation got a hold of it and said we want to include this as like a feature on this thing coming out. There was like this worldwide distributed thing, so that remix actually led us to like all these other different weird avenues. And one of the things that's a bummer is we talked about taking the original tapes from the 2 Belisba albums and doing some remixes with some big name producers. And we went to get the tapes, and they both are destroyed. One was in a flood and one was in a fire. So we don't have any of the original recordings, which is a super bummer. We've talked about maybe re-recording some of the stuff, but I don't know if we capture the same, energy this many years later. But yeah, we got on a bunch of cool compilations and did a bunch of. Belisba led to so many different avenues of like things we didn't see coming, which was really cool.
Can I ask you how you ended up working with Nectars?
Well, so I'm friends with Craig Mitchell, really good friends with Craig. And Craig, right as Belisba was winding down, Craig was shuttling between here and New York City and working for a couple different record labels, and he got an opportunity to do remix stuff for Yoko Ono, which was like this huge deal. And he's like, I got to jump on this. I got to take full advantage of this. So he's like, I'm pretty much going to go live in New York for a while. And he had been doing Retrodome for about a year and a half or two, and it was starting to be really popular at night. And I was coming back knowing that I was going back to college and I was going to be here. And he's like, listen, why don't I hand you the baton? You take over this night. So when I started that, I became very good friends with the owners at the time at Nectar's. I had worked with the owners who were before these owners when we first started Melisbaha, and the night was obviously like a massive success and made them a ton of money. And then, you know, over the course of time, the ownership, like it was 3 people, and then one of them kind of became a silent partner, and then the other 2 were doing stuff, and there was some inner turmoil, and then like things, the bar scene kind of slowed down, and they weren't willing to put more money into something that wasn't making as much money. And there was many reasons for them I'm going to try to say this as politically correct as I can, but losing their interest in their own business. And they kind of just gave up on keeping it up to date, renovating stuff, keeping like the air conditioner would die in the middle of summer, they wouldn't replace it. I'm like, you're asking people to go up in a 400-degree room. It's not fair. And I was just always,
it does get fucking hot up there, man. I did a couple comedy shows up there.
Sweatshirtome. I was always advocating for them to, like, if people see that you care about your business, then they'll care. If people see you don't care, they're not going to care. And they got to the point where they were frustrated with it and fed up with it. And at the end, unfortunately, after 20 plus years of dedication, I said, I can't stay committed to something when you guys aren't treating people correctly. And they not only lost interest in it, but they became grumpy about it. And at that point, I knew it was best for me to just move along. So it was a bummer, but I also 20 plus years of doing something is a long enough time, you know, like it was time anyway. So, but yeah, the experience overall up until the last few years was amazing and lucrative for both of us, both parties, you know. So definitely grateful.
And I've certainly seen a ton of amazing shows at Nectar's, and like, you know, they've had some really great musicians come through there.
Yeah, I think that the guys who just bought it, from what I'm hearing, are really, really ready to reinvigorate and come back to the roots of it and treat it like it is, which is, it's an iconic place that has a history and
chicken tenders and good music. Like,
right, exactly.
Maybe a fiddlehead.
Yeah, right.
I wanted to go back. I know my notes are a little all over the place here, but it sounded like you had a clothing store.
Yeah. So when IOU ended, I had started to kind of dabble in doing some acrylic painting stuff. I'd always had a vision of art of how I wanted to do it, but I didn't really know how to make it happen. When I went to Champlain and studied graphic design, I kind of figured out how I wanted to do it. And I think my style, when people look at it and talk about it, is kind of a combination of like urban art, but mixed with like equal parts Warhol and, you know, like pop art. And I liked bold colors. My images were DJ oriented, music oriented. And I liked bold statement colored pieces. So
me too.
I did a couple shows and they sold out. And then a friend of mine, her name's Melissa Rovtar, she was working at a poster store called Beyond the Wall on Church Street. And she was like, why don't you do smaller prints of some stuff and we'll put it on the counter and see if we can move some units. And we did. And the owner of the company was like, what is this account that's moving these units? And she told him about me, and he saw it, and he owned this poster company called Beyond the Wall, and it was an international distributed company, and he signed me up and picked a bunch of my designs. And one of the biggest ones that people don't realize is mine is the monkey with the headphones that everyone has seen before. That's my design, and that design alone got me into like Bed Bath and Beyond. And
I know I'm just seeing this too. Bed Bath and Beyond, Urban Outfitters.
Yeah, crazy. Like it just exploded. So then when that happened, I said, I was all online at that point. I said, I should just have a brick and mortar store in town, a smaller place that I can sell like my art. And then I did some of my art on clothing. And then we brought in other clothing lines that kind of matched with the vibe. Crooks and Castles and LRG and stuff that people were wearing at the time. And it was called Steez, and it was really successful. And I actually thought about kind of franchising it for a moment, but because of the size of it, and because like urban art and urban apparel is so like, you have to like think about 4 seasons ahead. You have to be ahead of the curve when you're ordering clothing for that, and like colors and fashion sense, and like there was a lot of pressure to like think that far. We'd be getting boxes in like from, we ordered 2 Christmases before and we wouldn't even remember what was in the boxes because it's been so long.
That's tough, man, because those types of sort of fashion patterns can switch up real quick.
All the time. All the like before you like it switches before you know even order, and then you've already ordered something. So the fact that the size of the store was like it's never really going to make less than this much money or more than this much money, I kind of decided it was funny. I had come to the conclusion that I'm like, I don't think I really want to do this forever. And like the day I was contemplating that in my head, this guy walked into the store and said, "How much would you sell the business to me for?" And I said, "The business isn't for sale." And he said, "Let me throw a number at you." And he threw a number down that was basically as much as I was going to make on the best possible scenario in the next 3 years of doing business. And I was like, okay, fine.
So you sold the business.
Sold the business. And I kept the name, but I sold the store and the artwork stuff. And I just thought it was the right time. It ended up being the perfect time.
Isn't that sort of the dream of business? Is you create a successful idea and then cash out?
Yeah. And he didn't know what he was doing, and he ended up running into the ground, unfortunately. But for
what a
me, it
bummer.
was like, yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. It was like I knew that my time in doing that was fun and was great, but it was over. And I was like, I was buying a house and I was getting married and I was transitioning into just the next phase of my life. So it like worked out perfect timing. And I continue to this day to I have paintings that are for sale in a gallery in New York and Brooklyn, and those do well. I don't, they're not, it's not crazy, but it's like just once in a while. I still do some poster stuff, so I keep my fingers in there a little bit. But like, it's funny. I've been a part of so many crazy different things. Like when I put that artistic bio together, I was like, damn, I've done a lot of shit. I hadn't
I
thought
actually
about it
mentioned
before.
that to you on the phone. I was like, damn, you've done a lot of shit. And you were like, now that I think about it, I have done.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. And I don't think about it that way because I just go from project to project to project. But I'm proud of all of it. And like the fact that like what's cool about art, whether it's paintings or digital art or music, is that it's time stamped and it's always going to be here, which I love. Like I'm creating something that like people come up to me all the time and like, oh, I'm listening to the IOU CD, or I love the first Blizba album, or I have your poster in my room, in my kid's room now. It was in my room, now it's in my kid's room. And like I love that it's just always going to be there, like it's not going away. So it's not like you create something that happens in a moment and it disappears. I mean, it is with live music, but with digital and recorded stuff and with art, it's like you're making something that's here and it's here to stay, which is cool.
That is the beauty of it, I believe. I have my own complaints about the internet and social media, but one
Yeah.
of the good things is that shit's just out there.
Yeah. If I didn't have to use social media to promote things, I wouldn't even be on it because it's annoying. But it is a great way to connect to many people at once and share information about upcoming shows or whatever's happening. So,
is it true that you raised $30,000 for Andy when he was in the hospital?
well, it's me and a bunch of other people, but yeah, we Lewis Calderon, who is a really good friend of Andy, a friend of mine, is friends with Z Trip and reached out to Z Trip about performing at a benefit for Andy when he was first in the hospital. And Z Trip is such a good dude that not only did he say yes, but he was performing the next night at the Grammys in LA, and he flew here on his own dime.
Oh,
Did the show here, jumped on a plane right after, flew to LA and did the Grammys the next day.
wow.
And that show raised that money for Andy. And
that was at higher ground?
Yeah, it was at higher ground. And Andy was in the hospital. And we set up a screen for him to watch it. live, and he was texting with Z-Trip, and a few times, well, Andy was texting me too, and texting a couple other people, just being like, I can't believe this is happening. This is amazing. He's playing everything I want him to play. And a couple times he would go to text. Now Z would be like, what do you want to hear, Andy? What do you want to hear? And he would go to text him something. And at one point, Zach Z-Trip stops the show and goes, he's like, my mind is blown right now. He's like, we love you, Andy. And he's like, I just asked him what he wanted to hear. And he said, Check the Rhyme by Tribe Called Quest. And I have it queued. And he just hit it and it played. And Andy's like, what? And just like, I was like crying tears of joy that night. Like the fact that he was so happy in that hospital room, and that energy was being translated to him. I was actually, right before I got on this Zoom with you, I was talking to Jason Liggett, Liggy, the lighting guy who's doing the projections and the lighting for this Gumbo party this Saturday that I'm doing. And we're going to have this moment where Dwight Richard from Dwight and Nicole is going to play this acoustic guitar thing, and I'm going to have this tribute to Andy. And I was reading Liggy this thing that I found, and it was a poem about a dog. But when I read it, I was just skimming through something, and my eyes caught on the words "a dog," because it's called Power of a Dog. But the words relating to a dog relate directly to how Andy was as a person. And
so anytime you read about a dog, you think about a dog?
Every time. It's like loyal, like, always have fun, always play, like, like, I don't remember all of them off the top of my head because I have it ready to read at the show, but I was reading it to League and I almost started tearing up, and he goes, you're gonna have a hard time getting through that live. And I was like, no, I know. Because it's genuine. It's like Andy was he was that loyal person, that person that like he had your back 1,000%. And it's just I've had a few people in my life that I've lost that are that good people that like why are the good ones taken from the earth? Why can't the dickheads be fucking erased? And the assholes live to be 85. The good people die young. It's like I never understand it, but his impact was so far reaching and just so beautiful, and that you can see that in the tributes to him and everything that happens every year for him. So,
and I really love the mural that the Anthill guys did in the alley. And I just interviewed Scotty about that, and he said like the night after he died, they came out and just did that in the freezing cold.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Scotty was telling me how he put the paint cans on. He put boiling water into Nalgene bottles and packed a cooler full of paint cans so that they could do it that night. And I thought that was a really touching.
Yeah, and what I love about that mural is one of the last pieces that Andy created art-wise when he was in the hospital right before he died. That's like the background of that piece. So they put like his last creative.
Oh,
yeah, no, it's amazing.
They didn't tell me that.
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
I'll yell at Scotty later for not letting me know that.
No, it's really, really cool. Yeah.
Wow. And that's, I feel like, really one of the most iconic paintings in Burlington. Every time I walk by that alley, I check and make sure it's still there.
No, and I'm so like worried that some young buck's gonna come up and try to graph over it.
I'll fight a kid over that.
Yeah.
If I see anyone fuck that painting up, or any of Scotty's paintings, or any of those guys' paintings, like we might have words.
Yeah. I hope it never happens.
Can we talk about your book?
Yeah, so it's really funny because I did the 80s night for so long, and I lived on Church Street, and my store was about a half a block down on Church Street, and then another 3/4 of a block down was Metronome. So my life was up and down Church Street for a long time. And because I DJ'd so close to my home, and because many people would come in when I was DJing and be like, hey, let me buy your shot, by the end of some of those nights, I was sloppy drunk. And I always saw things happen there and witnessed hilarious things. And I'm like, no one's ever going to believe that I saw this in here. This is too funny. They're going to think it's made up. So I had a little notepad, and I would write down like a 5-6 word description in my drunken scribble to remind myself later when I would look at it what I was trying to remember. And I would fold it in half, and I had a big zipper bag on this DJ bag that I had that I used forever, and I would just tuck it in this pocket. Well, right when I finished doing the gig, I was emptying out that DJ bag, and I opened that zipper, and on the table dumps out all these little scrumpled notes. And my wife at the time was like, "What is all this?" And I start reading it to her, and I'm like, "These are all these funny things that I saw there." And I'm just laughing out loud, telling her the stories as each one's reminding me of the story. And she's like, "I have a crazy suggestion." She's like, "You should write a book, and every chapter is about these stories." And I was like, "That's actually fucking brilliant." And then she had the even better idea of take the beginning of each chapter of the book, quote the lyrics from an 80s song that I was playing in those nights, and have it be like the verse and part of the chorus. And that's so, and give credit to the writers and the producers and whatnot. So as you start the chapter, you're reading this, and if you know the song, you're singing along, and then that chapter relates to the message of that song. So each chapter is its own standalone thing. So it's a great like bathroom reading book, because it's like you can read 3 chapters, put it down, and come back. And the stories are just straight debauchery. Some of them are dirty, some of them are hilarious, some of them are, it's like it covers a lot of ground. And I put it on Amazon, and it started to sell like crazy, because the tag words were like 80s music, DJ,
How many copies did you sell?
I think we sold like 14,000.
Wow, dude.
Yeah.
Holy
So,
shit.
and it's still on there. And the reviews are great. I love the reviews of people who are like, I don't even know anything about Burlington or Metronome, but I just like wanted to read about 80s music.
Do
And
you have a
stories.
copy that I could have?
Oh yeah. I'll send it to you.
If I came to see, oh yeah, or that, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll
But
read the shit out of that.
just to give you an example of like, this is exactly how this book goes. So the first chapter, I used to DJ in the back of the stage in this little hole in the wall. I could just barely see through, and it was behind the stage. And there's a band room back there, and I heard this like bumping, thumping against the door one night when I was back there. And I'm like, nobody's supposed to be in there. So I just like in between songs go to open the door, and it's blocked. And I push it open, and there's this kid, and I swear to God, I don't know how he got in there. He didn't look like he was 21. He looked like Howdy Doody. He had red hair, like combed to the side and freckles. And he's smiling the biggest smile in the world at me. And in front of him, with her back to me, on her knees, was this like 70-year-old woman with a bald spot in her head, just giving him dome. And he's the happiest person I've ever seen. And my initial reaction was to be like, you can't do that in here, get out of here. But I looked at him and I was like, this kid's having the best night of his life. And this old lady doesn't look like anybody's forcing her to do
Just
this.
hurry up or something.
So I slowly just started to back out the door, and I'm like, you know what? Do you? And as I do that, he holds up his hand, and he's got her dentures in his mouth. He took her teeth out. So I'm like horrified. So I go back to DJ. A couple of songs later, I feel a tap on my shoulder, and he leans over and he puts $5 bill super gently on my mixer, and he whispers in my ear, so creepy, I'll never forget it. He's like, "Thanks for letting her finish." And I'm like, that was the worst and best decision I ever made at the same time. And so the song that I picked for this chapter to start the whole book is Man Eater by Hall & Oates. And my friends were like, dude, is this going to get worse than this? I was like, oh yeah, this is just the beginning. Like, have fun. Here she comes. Watch out, boy, she'll chew you up. It was amazing. Like, and yeah, I'll send you a copy of the book for 100%. It's like, it's a fun read. There's a couple moments in there that are like a little serious, but like most of it is just like me talking about being a DJ and talking a lot. I talk a lot about Burlington at the time was like this weird fucking dichotomy of, the tourist part of Burlington promotes it as like great place to live, like beautiful waterfront. And then on the other side of it, it was like UVM was, top 5 in drunkest college, and like,
yeah, and then it's like also, hey, there's raw cow shit flowing into the lake.
right. They sell it as one thing, and it really exists as another, and it's even more so now. But yeah, Burlington's a funny, weird place, man.
I agree with you, man. We talk about that privately sometime, but
Yeah.
I want to keep this going because I got a couple more for you here.
Okay.
I want to get to the Gumbo, but I also want to ask you about some of the folks that you've performed with.
Yeah.
And we've got a list. Boy, we've got a laundry list here.
Yeah.
And maybe we could rapid fire through the list.
Yeah.
The Roots.
Oh, dude, amazing. Like it was at a college festival. I was just mesmerized. That's when they like were really starting to blow up, and I was just mesmerized at how well they control the crowd, and they go from style to style to style to style with ease. Like James Brown to old school hip hop to new hip hop to funk to like, and they were what they were doing is educating people. The same thing with KRS-One. Like you go to those shows, you're getting educated as a kid about hip hop, about music, and I just soaked all that in. Like I knew that I was there to learn something, and I made sure I did.
Cool in the Gang.
We signed this huge.
Really,
dude. Well, wait till you hear this story. We signed this huge contract with this woman, Susan Blonde, who was a publicist when Blissbot was just blowing up, and we were the only unsigned band ever to work with her. And one of the first gigs she got us was opening for Cool in the Gang at the House of Blues in L.A. And they were having this resurgence because Quentin Tarantino started using their songs in movies, and so they had this like comeback. And I got drunk in the green room with Pee Wee Herman, Ed McMahon, Michael Keaton was there. I was getting hammered with Pee Wee, and I put my arm around him, and I made some comment about it's okay, like everybody jerks off, don't worry about
Pee Wee Herman.
And he got pissed and left. And I have this blurry Polaroid of me and him, and my buddies are like, "You had a friend for life, and you fucked it up because you're a dummy." And I did. I totally fucked it up. I was like, me and Paul are gonna be buddies forever.
Yeah.
Hilarious, man. Like this is my life. It's been this crazy. Like you can't make this shit up. Like
we're gonna keep rapid fire. Okay. Tribe Called Quest. You did a show with them.
Yeah, that was when we opened for them, and I'm obviously a lifelong fan.
Me too.
So, yeah.
Heroes. Maceo Parker.
Maceo, we played a college show with, and before the gig, I was in the gym playing basketball, which we did a lot when we had time. And he came in with his crew and said, "Let's play a game." And we battled Maceo Parker's team. And I have a poster from the gig signed to him, and it's like, "Fattie B, let's shoot some hoops." And I treasure that thing.
Wow. Black Eyed Peas.
Oh man, it was at the old higher ground. And
Winooski
crapping on them for being so poppy and just kissing, the pop music ass. And I was like, I agree with you, but at the same time, I respect them for going after the money and finding a way to do what they did well. So when I met them,
I've heard their shows are really good too.
Yeah, when I met them, I was like, man, props to you guys. Like, I know you got haters, but you're walking and laughing to the bank.
They were like the upbeat Fugees.
Yeah. Yep, 100%.
Morris Day and the Time.
Oh man, we opened up for him in New York City when we first started playing, and Craig was part of that, getting us that gig and being a Prince fan. And I'll just never forget. I went in the green room to meet Morris Day, and he was literally standing in front of that mirror that his guy holds up to him, checking himself, and just talking about how fly he looked. And I was like, "Wow, this isn't even act. This is really you." And he goes, "Oh no, this is me every day." It was amazing. It was amazing.
Busta Rhymes.
Oh God, we played a show with him in Poughkeepsie, New York, and he was late, and we were opening, and the crowd was pissed, and they were just like, "We don't want to hear crap from you guys. Like, where's Busta?" And he came in there like a ball of energy and just destroyed, man. Like, yeah,
the Wailers.
He's amazing.
Sorry,
Wailers. We played with at a reggae festival, and I mean, I just was like, "How is this happening that I'm on the same bill as the Wailers?" Amazing.
This is such a fucking laundry list. KRS-One.
Yeah, I opened up for him one time, and then I DJ'd for a set that he did another time. And I had conversations with him, and he looks you in the eye and he talks to you with such intensity, and he's like, "I'm going to teach people something here today." He's like, "I'm here to perform, but I'm here to teach. I'm here to help people learn what this music means, why we do it, and what it's all about." And he literally, you can watch people in the crowd when he's performing, they're getting it. Like
they came. KRS-One came to my college when I was at Worcester Polytechnic Institute, and there was just a bunch of nerds standing around, like, "What's happening right now?"
Yeah.
He was like, "Who got my albums?" And I was the only one in the audience with my hand. I was like, "I got an album," and he threw me a free vinyl that I gave to my homie.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, let's see. Ben Harper.
Oh man, he's so ridiculously talented and just like the most quiet, humble. Him and Michael Franti, who I met and we played with, are like the same vein of human, just like the kindest, most the wisest. Anything that comes out of them, you're like, I need to listen to every word you're saying and just learn from you. Like just kind, relaxed. Know that they're world class talent, but don't know it in like an ego way. Know it in like I'm going to share with you this gift that I've been given from the universe, and we're going to explore this and enjoy this together. Like they bring you in with them, which is like such a blessing with an artist. There's a lot of artists who you get like straight ego vibe, and there's some that you're like you feel like when they hug you and hold you. Michael, the funny story about Michael Franti, we played with him in San Francisco with Bliss Behind like '94, and then 7 or 8 years later, he was playing at the old Higher Ground, and I was there just hanging posters for a gig I had like a couple weeks later. And he walks in off the tour bus, and he's walking across the club, and he goes, "Oh, Fattie B is in the house," and I was like, "Dude, how many people do you meet a day? Like I remember you because you're you, but you met me for 25, 30 minutes one time, and you remember." He's like, "Oh yeah, I
And he
remember."
remembered you. Yeah.
And
Awesome.
he immediately went to that gig. He's like, "This is what we did. This is the song I was on you with." I'm like, "Oh my god!"
I
So
gotta
he,
say though, Kyle, your recall is impressive here. I'm running
yeah,
through a long list here, and boy, your memory seems slick, like
thanks.
Slick Rick.
Yeah, that was at the old. There was a place called Plan B, where
Plan B,
Pizzeria Verita is,
Plan
and
B.
yeah, yeah, I know. Great name for the bar, right? I told him that. I'm like, "You guys are dummies." But he came and did the whole Slick Rick, old school set, and a lot of people there had no idea what they were watching. But me and the few people, A Dog especially, were just like, "This is a moment right here. We got to remember this forever."
Mm, mm. I'm gonna skip over Medeski. We already did. Oh, Talib.
Yeah, that was at UVM. I got to open for him at UVM, and I
Wow.
had heard some things about him being kind of an egomaniac, but my experience with him was great. I thought he was awesome. Yeah,
Mm. Guru. You got Guru on a show?
yeah, that was at the Ohio Ground too. That was touring, I think, for the last Jazzmatazz album, if I remember right. But
Which I
yeah, how
believe you
funny
said
how I
was
like met him and thought about that, and now I'm doing kind of the same type of thing with
mm,
Gumbo.
that was a legendary album.
Oh God, yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
Far Side.
yeah. Saw them once, and then opened up for them once, and then when they came back to the newer High Ground and did the anniversary tour of the album and did the album in full, I went in the back and said what up to them, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we remember you," and they're like, "Come over and hang out on the side of the stage," and just like vibe with them, and just hearing that Bizarre Ride album in full. Like that album never left my car for like fucking 3 months when it came out, man. It's like that was the stoner hip hop album of all time.
This is one that I'm super curious about. Us three.
Yeah, that we played with them in New York City at the New Music Festival, and that song had just blown up, and their rapper was so talented, but it was the beginning, and we could see it that night, and we didn't really know it, but we sensed something was weird. But he had like a very serious drug addiction, and he ended up dying from it. And
Wow.
that group could have been
You
way
mean
bigger than they were even, but I
the
think there was so much drama behind the scenes that it never added up to make sense. But
the Dip Trip Flip Fantasia guy?
yeah, that when that song came out, it was like, oh man, this is. It was like the same time as like Diggable Planets and that vibe. So it was just
Dude,
like, yeah,
that's another. Yep.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I bought one of their CDs at the music shop in St. Johnsbury at the
Oh
bottom.
hell yeah, yeah.
Hell yeah. What do we got here? Boy, Guru. Boy, you got a Guru show?
The Guru,
Did we just do that one? Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, let's do where am I at? Us three, Gil Scott Heron. That's where I'm at.
that was in Boston, and I had met Reed Conflict opening up for us, and then went back to New Music Cafe, and or it wasn't New Music Cafe, it was something else, but opened up for him and just literally was mesmerized by him, man. Like what a genius and what a like so much knowledge. He'd seen so much in his life. You could just tell in his eyes and his storytelling that like you were witnessing greatness, you know.
And with the premiere beats,
Yeah, yeah.
Premier was one of my you know, kind of musical role models growing up.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Let's see. Let's rip through it. Common.
That was at Higher Ground. Great
Yeah.
dude, super friendly, super just ready to like entertain people. Just happy to be like. I don't think he does a lot of touring anymore, but I think when at that point he was just happy to be bringing his message to people's ears and eyes, and you could tell he was joyful about it. And I at that point was over my touring grind and trying to figure out if I wanted to continue to do that kind of thing on a regular basis, and just his joy in it came through pretty evidently.
Mm. J5.
Oh God, such cool dudes, such great performers. Live show is amazing. Charlie Tuna and I hit it off like instantly. He was just like, "Man, your voice sounds a lot like mine when you record." He's like, "We should do a song together." We talked about it a few times. We never made it happen. I kind of wish we had, but he's just one of the nicest people in music. Like, genuinely cares about what you're talking about when you're having a conversation with him. So good
I'm on
dude.
course. Like, what? Oh, fuck. Yeah. Uh, uh, I forgot the word. Yeah. Down and dirty, like Ike and Tina's divorce
Yeah,
proceedings.
yeah, yeah, yeah. They're amazing. And Newmark is just like a genius
Oh,
DJ. Like,
yeah. No question.
yeah.
Yep. Yep. Redman.
Oh God, that was at a festival, and he finished his set, and I remember we were on after him, which was weird. And we were still opening for him, but we were somehow on after him. I think he had to go to another gig. But I remember he finished his set and he ran off the stage, and girls started chasing him, and he was running through a field and jumped in a van and it drove away, and the girls were chasing the van like halfway across the field. I'm like, he's lucky he got in there. He would have gotten ripped to death.
He does amazing shows. I got to say, I went to Rock the Bells one year. It was supposed to be him and Redman,
Yeah,
or sorry, him and
definitely.
Method Man.
Yeah,
Method Man couldn't make it, and he did the whole show
and kid
himself.
still killed it. Yeah,
He fucking
yeah,
destroyed.
yeah. He
Really
he owns the stage for sure.
one of the best hip hop shows I've seen.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Cool.
He's
I'm gonna
insane.
skip a couple here,
Yeah,
but I'm gonna. Big Daddy Kane seems like maybe I should mention that one.
yeah. That was massive for me. That was almost as big as Tribe, because for me, the first Big Daddy Kane album, like, I didn't have cable at my house growing up, but my friend did. So I worked a deal out with him where I'm like, I'll give you rides to and from school if I can watch Yo MTV Raps at your house. And Big Daddy Kane videos, I was just like mesmerized with that dude and his like wordplay and his flow and his like confidence level. Like, I was like, I'm gonna do that someday. And in my mind, I set that goal. It's like hilarious. This nerdy white kid from Bristol, Vermont. He's like, I'm gonna be him. Just funny, man.
Here's a guy I really like is Oteil Burbridge.
Oh God, man. I'll never forget this. He's like, I took this stick and this can and I made a bass. And he brought it up and he played it for the rest of the set. And it sounded, if not as good, if not better, than any bass I've ever heard before. And it was like this like backwoods invention thing. And I was like, he's ripping this handmade bass to shreds. Like, yeah, he's
And I
amazing.
loved how he stepped in and played with some of those old Grateful Dead
Yeah,
guys.
yeah, yeah. It's a cool dude.
Mm-hmm. Soul Live.
I got lucky enough to do a couple verses with them, and then became friends with a couple of the musicians, and was just I've been lucky enough to get my name in the mix with some of those bands, and they know who I am, which is nice. So like, if I'm ever at a show and I just let it be known that I'm there, they'll be like, "Yo, come do a verse," and I'm like, "Oh," sometimes I'm nervous about it, but sometimes I'm like, "Fuck yeah, let's go."
Mm.
And they just lay there. Every groove they lay is directly in the pocket. Like, they don't alter. Once they're in that groove, it's just like locked.
I saw them at Bonnaroo way back in college, which was a mistake. I shouldn't have gone there, but I was super happy to see them. They put
Yeah,
on a great show.
yeah,
Or Lettuce. I know some of those same
yeah.
guys
Lettuce.
play
Yeah,
with
a lot of the
Lettuce.
guys were interchangeable. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And just a couple more I want to ask you about. Boy, what do we got? Questlove is on here, and Rob Swift. I'd also like to ask you about because I've met Rob a couple times.
yeah. So Questlove did a DJ set at two different places in Burlington, and I opened up for one, and then I just went and hung out at one. and he was awesome. And we chatted backstage for a while after one of them, and just a really, really cool dude. I always just like felt like he was the type of person where when you approached him and you asked him music questions, he would want to just go into it with you, and he did. And then Rob Swift, I can't remember who booked it, but it was at this old place called the Green Room on Pine Street way back in the day. And it was just like this intimate, like 45, 50 people. And he just destroyed this 2.5 hour set. And we just hung out and shot the shit and did shots after, and just like a cool dude. And obviously just an insane cut. Like his scratching is like so precise. I remember Andy was like wetting his pants watching it. And I'm like, Andy, you're that good too, dude. Like,
Really?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Maybe I should reconnect with Rob.
Yeah.
He used to come out to some of the comedy shows.
Yeah, we should get him back up here.
Mm-hmm. All right. The Gumbo is last, but I'd like to ask you about your health, if you wouldn't mind
Yeah,
talking.
no, I
It,
don't
it
mind talking
sounds
about
like
it at all.
maybe you created this album, kind of out of
Yeah,
maybe with some of your health in mind, maybe.
yeah. So like a year ago at Christmas, I was in the hospital and they were trying to figure out what was going on with me. I had some stuff going on. They didn't really know what it was. And then while I was in the hospital, I received a message late in the night, one of the nights, and I was having all these tests done, and I was very much in a depressed mind state and kind of blaming the rest of the world, everybody but me. And this woman sent me a message and was like, "Hey, I don't know if you remember me and my husband are UVM alumni. We met you at the Jazz Fest show a few years ago, and you took the time to say hi to our son, and he's 12 now, and he's a music lover, and he's a drummer." And I had posted earlier this day when she sent me this that I was in the hospital dealing with some heart health related stuff. It wasn't very specific because I didn't know. And she wrote, Reese, who's her son, she said, he just wanted you to know that he's thinking of you. And she told me in this moment that he also has a very serious heart condition and is going to be going to Boston Children's at some point to have a surgery that they're not really sure how the outcome is going to be from it. It's a risky surgery and it's something that hopefully goes well, but there's just questions about everything. And just the fact that this 12-year-old kid who I had met for a minute was reaching out to me, it hit me like in exactly the way I needed to be hit. It was like a slap to my face, a wake-up call of like, man, you're a grown adult who makes bad choices health-wise and it's causing your body to say enough. This is a kid who has no control over his situation, and he is thinking of someone else, So like, I just started texting with her that night, the next day, and just said, "You're raising an amazing human. Tell me more about him." And I said to myself, I'm going to change the way I look at not only my health going forward from here, but I'm going to change the way that I look at life, and that life is short, and we don't know what we're given for time. And I said, over the last 5 or 6 years, I'd had these bedroom producers sending me random beats like, man, we know you're like a legend around here in the music scene and you're not really doing much stuff. Would you want to rap on this song on my album? And I'd be like, I really appreciate you. I really, that means a lot to me, but my creative mind wasn't there, and I would politely decline. But I always stack the beats in a folder on the side of my computer, like someday, someday. And then when this happened, I said, I'm going to make another album. And I said, and I told myself when Blues by Ended, I'm not going to make another album like this unless I do it for real. And I said, I told Reese, like him and I connected, and I said, I'm going to do this from your message. Like, I see your message as to me, like you sent me a message to me through your mom. I see it as the universe sent you a message and you pass it on to me. So I'm not taking this lightly, So I reached out to the
Can I just
producer.
jump in for 1 second here?
Yeah.
This album that you've put together is one of the heaviest hitting lineups of basically Vermont music royalty that I've ever seen.
Well, I had a few people in mind. I'm going to be honest about this. I had like in my brain starting this, I was thinking like 10 or 12 songs, and I had certain people in mind. And when I reached out to the producers and said, here's what I want to do, I want to combine your beats with live musicianship and live vocalists and make a collaborative album. And then all the producers were like, fuck yeah, that's something they dreamed about. So then when I started reaching out to the artists that I knew that I wanted involved that were very close to me, Jen Hartswick, Craig Mitchell, Dwight and Nicole, as those people said yes, and I said to them, I said to everyone when I reached out, I said, look, the messaging of this, the main message of this record is going to be that the universe is sending us signals all the time as humans. And we're all so busy and like prepping dinner for our kids and thinking about the next event we got to go to and work stress and money stress that we're blind to these messages that the universe is trying to get us to hear. But then when one gets to you and you hear it and you see it and it changes your path for the better, that's what this record overall is about. And I swear to God to you, 95% of the artists that I said this to are like, I either am going through that right in this moment or I just went through it. So I know exactly what you're talking about. So when I would send them the beat, like I sent Jen Hartswick the beat that I knew I wanted her to be on. She was in LA on tour with Trey Band.
Yeah, talk about Jen a little, because I went to high school. Well, she was in the jazz band at Linden Institute. And our jazz band used to be phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I grew up listening to her, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on Jen.
I just think she's one of the greatest people I've ever known in my life. I just think her soul is so pure, and her and I have a very, very special, we're basically brother and sister, like honestly. And she's just such a loving person, and her talent level is off the chain. When I bring people to see her and like she'll be singing and they're like, her voice and her stage presence is nuts. And then she picks up the trumpet.
In high school, yeah, exactly. In high school, I only knew her as a trumpet player, but then then she started singing in the jazz choir, and boy, she just crushes everything she does.
Yeah. So when I sent her that song, I'm not kidding you, 25 minutes later, max, she called me and says, check your voicemail. And she was just singing over the instrumental on her phone to me. And what she sang was this poetic, beautiful, worded description of what I wanted that song to be and what that beat was. And she did it in 20 minutes, and it was absolutely perfect. And I said, don't change a note of that. Like, that's exactly what it's going to be. And every artist after that, Nicole Nelson would be like, I hear the beat, here's what I'm hearing, what do you think? I'm like, fucking love it, don't change anything. So every artist it was happening to. And then a friend of mine would be like, hey, I heard about this project you're doing, can I get in on it? And then it just started to grow and grow and grow.
No,
it's 27 songs. And I have two really close friends that I respect their music taste so much, and they came over one night near the end of this, and I said, I want to play you guys the rough mixes of this stuff and see what your thoughts are. In my mind, I'm like, I'm hoping they're going to tell me that a few of them were like, that one's not as strong, that one's not as strong. We got through like 18 of the songs. They're like, man, there's no fillers here. There's no cut.
Do any of these suck?
They're like, don't change anything. I was like, that's the problem. I was like, I have to cut this off soon because it's just getting out of control, the size of the scope of it. But it's just, I knew that I made it for me getting some heavy stuff out of me onto recording. Like, there's some songs about death, there's some songs about loss, there's songs about lost love. But I knew I loved it, and I knew I was happy with how it came out. I had no idea it was going to get like accolade after accolade and be like record of the year, and like all these younger kids were going to dig it. And like the fact that it's like,
seems like every media outlet in the state picked up on it.
It's been unbelievable. So this party that we're doing this coming Saturday for it is going to be this amazing celebratory night, because it got postponed because I had another health scare when it was supposed to happen the first time, right before the holidays this year, where my heart went into a weird rhythm. They couldn't get it out, and they actually had to like shock it back into rhythm.
Yeah, you said that you had to get the fucking paddles, huh?
Yeah.
So that sounds like close to death.
It wasn't. I was closer to death the first time. Wow. The doctor told me the first time, if I had continued to do what I was doing and not come into the hospital, he said I was about a week away from my heart exploding in my chest.
Wow.
But this time, I was feeling really, really good health-wise. And then it happened, and I was like, I can't breathe. I have disorientation. And I knew because of the health problem before, I said, I'm not going to mess around. I'm going to go to the hospital and see. And the minute I went in there, like, your heart is like 160 BPMs, then it's 90, then it's 140, then it's 110. And it was like bouncing all over.
Arrhythmia.
So they were like trying basically to like figure out why, and they're like, we don't really have a reason, but we want to fix it so you'll feel better. So for a month I had to go on these freaking crazy meds that fucked me up really bad, and then like at the end of the 30 days they shock it, and 5 seconds later it's back to normal, and now I feel great.
You feel good? Yeah. Sorry for the tangent there. I really want
awesome.
you to. I want you to plug the show here because we're getting towards the end. But and I'm coming out. I'm coming out Saturday too. And goddamn it, $12 tickets is fucking ridiculous.
It's insane. And I was just on the phone, like I said before, with Diggy talking about the timeline of this night, and it's going to be cool because I'm going to do this as like a storytellers, VH1 storytellers type vibe, where we're going to have this really cool jazz club style setup on the stage with really cool lighting and like a fake bar set up, and the DJ is going to be the bartender, and I'm going to be talking to the bartender and doing like fake shots of apple juice.
Who's the DJ? Can I ask you who the DJ is?
Kango.
Wow.
Yeah, he's nasty.
Wow.
And yeah, it's going to be great. And so we'll start the show with I'll tell the story of how Bob Wagner and I met, say, and how the song came about. And then they'll come out. I'll walk to the center stage with him. We'll perform our song. But then I'm going to go back and sit at the bar, and he's going to do 2 songs of his own with his band. And then he'll exit. And then I'll talk about Nicole Nelson, and she'll come out, and we'll do our song together. And then I'll step aside, and she'll do 2 songs. So the whole night is a celebration of Gumbo, but it's more a celebration of each artist getting to show this crowd, here's why I love music. Let me share 2 songs. It might be a cover and an original, it might be whatever. But here's some music for you, the crowd, to enjoy. And let's just be thankful that this collaborative music community is coming back together.
And be thankful it's only $12 fucking dollars.
Yeah, right. With all those artists, like it's crazy. Everyone's donating their time, man. It's all going to Boston Children's Hospital in Reese's name, which is amazing.
Wow, that's
all the album proceeds and all the party proceeds are going.
And I saw you also maybe donate some money to Make-A-Wish.
Yeah, I did that before with some of the compilations that I did called Hop. I did a 7 series of those, and those were just bedroom producers who were making cool music that I wanted to have on a compilation to share.
There's 3 more people I would like to ask you about before I get out of here. Okay. One of them is Matt Scott.
Yeah. When I started Gumbo, I was working with Zach Crawford, Skysplitter.
That's the other one.
Okay, so I started working with Zach because I knew of him through the Aztecs work and some other stuff he's done. And everyone said he's the one to master and mix some of the stuff when it's ready to be done. So him and I connected. And then I'm pretty sure it was him that said to me, do you know Matt Scott? And I said, no, I don't. And he said, you need to. And he said, he is this musical savant genius that plays instruments, sings, produces, just has great musical knowledge, and you can trust his vision. And the first track that I sent to him was a track called Lead Us Home that Mr. Burns made the beat for. And when I sent it to him,
Peace to Burns, yeah.
Actually, I didn't even tell him when I sent it to him what I was thinking. In my brain, I was thinking, I want this to be a song that I would be writing to a woman if I was imagining the beginning of the best relationship you could ever imagine, where you just trust each other. There's no BS. There's no arguing. There's no disagreement. It's just like rainbows and kittens. And it's about, you're about to embark on something you never thought you'd
flowers and sunshine and shit.
And when he sent me the chorus back, I hear the singing, and it sounded like John Legend almost. And I'm like, this is fucking gorgeous. And what he was saying was exactly what I was thinking about. And I said, who did you get to sing on this? He's like, oh, that's me. I was like, what? And then I didn't even know what this dude looked like. And we get on a Zoom meeting the first time we meet. And I love Matt. This is not derogatory anyway, but he looked like an extra from The Hobbit. Like his hair was like all sticking up. His glasses are super thick. He's leaning way into the camera. And I'm just like, dude, this can't be you singing on this. I'm like, you're the white John Legend. And he was just like, thank you so much. And dude, from that point forward, every song I sent to him to mix, the first few, he would say, I have a suggestion. And then he'd send it to me and I'd hear it and I'd be like, love it. And then after that, finally, I'd just say, you don't even have to ask me if you want to try something, just try it and I'm going to like it. And it was the same thing with Zach, where everything they did to add to the effects or to add to the spacing or to add to like volume or an idea about changing something for the better, it all worked. and it all made sense. And those two, and Luke Gauthier, those three had a huge, like, they shaped Gumbo for sure. I had visions, but they shaped it. You know, this whole thing, this whole project is this collaborative thing that, like, if it had been just a Fattie B record, no one would have cared. And if it had been just a, you know, Zach Sky Splitter record, no one would have cared. But if it had been just a Luke record, no one cared. But the fact that we all put our pieces in and formed this thing, it is what it is because of the love and the collaborative effort. I truly believe that.
And the last person I'd like to ask you about is Justin Boland.
Justin Boland is,
you got him out of the closet.
Genius. Yeah, I always wanted to do a song with him. The first time I saw him on stage, I was like listening to him and I'm like, man, he is dropping some references right here and no one's picking up on it. And people don't even know what to take of him live. They just like are like, I don't get it. And I'm like, man, you need to listen to what's going on here. Like, so I think I came up to him the first time and just gave him a pound and said, man, I respect what you are doing 100%. And he felt that from me. And we stayed in touch over the years, and he's always been a supporter of my stuff. And then when I started this, he was one of the first people that I said, Justin, I don't know what song it's going to be yet, but I want you on a track. And when I sent him that track, he was just like, hell yeah. And that was before I even had Nicole Nelson on the hook of it.
That beat is nasty.
Oh, and then what he did, I said, you know, she's calling the title A New Day. And he's like, that's all I need. And his verse from beginning to end is perfectly descriptive of appreciating life and paying respect to the people who came before you and respect to the young kids who are killing it. And like the way he just framed the whole thing was like such a genius storyteller like move. And that verse of his was actually going to be second on that song, but I'm like, no, that's got to be first. Has to be, because he's setting the tone. And then when her vocal comes in, it's just like, my friends are like, you need to find out who's going to do the next James Bond movie and send that to them, because that could be the theme. Like, so yeah, man, Justin Boland, Wombatikus. I actually just said to him the other day,
Hump Jones.
I said, right. Humposaurus, whatever the other one is.
Humpsaurus Rex, or
yeah. I was like, man, I just sent him a message.
I said,
dude, I'm so happy that I had a small part in bringing you back from the fucking coffin. Because now he's just like spitting out songs that he recorded 10 years ago. He just put one out.
Thank you, by the way.
Amazing.
I've been waiting to hear some new Justin music forever, and it seems like you were the first guy to get it out of him. So
I think he was itching toward it, but I think that it helped him wake up and say, "I'm ready to do this again," which is, I love it. You know, like,
I suspect that he never stops writing.
And yeah, he's got vaults, I'm sure. Yeah.
Fattie B, Kyle Thompson. I'm out of questions here. I want to thank you for your time, dude. This has been a pleasure. Before we get out of here, I always leave the last word for my guests. I'd love if you remind everyone about the show on Saturday and where it's at, and also if there's any shout outs or anything we missed or shameless plugs you want to make. Now is the time. Thank you again, man. This has really been,
thanks so much. This has been awesome. I guess just with Gumbo, this coming Saturday night at the Double E, the IMAX Theater in Essex. Doors are at 6. 14th Star Brewing. I have a friend who works with them. They've been very generous, and that anybody who comes in from 6 to 6:30, they're going to give free beer to, which is nice. The show starts right at 7 o'clock on the nose. It's definitely a family-friendly show. Like I said, it's going to be storyteller's vibe. We're going to have some really, really energetic, cool moments. We've got vocalists, we've got DJs, we've got break dancers, we've got MCs, we've got horn players, we've got, you know, all kinds of stuff going on. And I think it's going to be a really, really emotional, fun night. And I know in that IMAX theater, one of the reasons we decided to do it there was it's comfortable seating, and every seat is a perfect view. But Liggy is going to just destroy these lights and these projections on the screen. He's got a mix of videos and still shots, and it's going to sound amazing, look amazing, like energy be amazing. And just for $12, and the money going to benefit the Boston Children's Hospital in Reese Pay's name. It's amazing. And we're filming it and we're recording the audio and we're going to mix that down. And then down the road, we're going to air this on Vermont Public Television as a special, which is going to be great. So I hope people can come. I know a lot of tickets are bought. They're flying. It's a limited capacity seating. So grab your
I got
ticket.
two. I already got my two.
Awesome. And then
I'm
I guess just as far as shout outs, I just want to thank all the producers and artists that did Gumbo with me, because I'm so grateful that we all made this timestamp record together that's going to last in Vermont history, which is amazing. And every time I listen to it, I'm proud of it. And I want to just thank my friends and my family for supporting me in my projects throughout the years, and just trusting that if I'm going to put my heart and soul into something, I'm going to do it full bore, and that when I invite them to an art opening or to a show opening or whatever it may be, they know that I'm not going to waste their time. I'm going to do it right, and I want to deliver. If I'm going to deliver part of myself in an art way to people, I want them to be happy with what they're receiving. So just thanks to all my friends and family for supporting me. And thank you for doing this. This kind of stuff, we need more of it in the world right now. And it's just positive energy. And, I just appreciate you so much.
I'm going to leave it right there, man. This has been a pleasure. I'll see you Saturday.
Yeah, no doubt. Appreciate it.
Peace.
Peace.